Welcome to the introduction video for StateThugs.com. In this video, I'll read through some of this website's content. Feel free to read more after this video, or to just dive in and skip this video. This site provides irrefutable, detailed proof of the United States State Department funding illegal drug running around the world. They finance it through contractors, so that way they can just publicly deny any allegations. They've been hiring the same contractors for decades, despite those contractors being caught many times doing the dirty work. This is money laundering by the State Department through its complicit contractors. This website is not meant to cover every detail of this topic. Mainly what you can find here is the result of a Freedom of Information Act probe I did directed at the Office of Inspector General for the U.S. State Department. The OIG, Office of Inspector General, is designed to audit and oversee the State Department. At the end of this site are some links if you want to look more deeply into all of this. Treat this website as a long news article on these issues. DynCorp was founded in 1946 and has a long history of drug running around the world, as well as other horrid crimes such as human and sex trafficking. INLA, the Bureau of International Narcotics and Law Enforcement Affairs, Office of Aviation, is part of the State Department and is supposed to fight narcotics around the globe. They do, but they also use their intelligence information and budget to facilitate the illicit drug trade the world over. Here's a quote from page 29 of records from the State Department OIG. Quote, "We note that the Aviation Governing Board is not consistently informed of significant aviation operations," end quote. And, quote, "We find that INLA was not consistently accounting for aircraft properly or disposing of assets properly," end quote. That stinks of flying the drugs, who they are supposed to be eradicating, to cartels and eventually to the end users, addicts of drugs all around the world. Also, quote, "It is not doing well at increasing the host nation's capability to take over aviation programs. I believe we identify 80 million in questioned costs," end quote. So in other words, INLA and subcontractor DynCorp are monopolizing the drug running all over the world. They are an international organization. They operate at air bases in Colombia, Peru, Panama, Iraq, especially Afghanistan, as well as in the United States at air bases in D.C., Florida, Alabama, and Arizona. They are truly a global crime syndicate. Plus, they are proven to be one and the same with DynCorp from references on this site. Afghanistan in particular is where there are two interests of being there, officially against ISIS and unofficially the poppy fields. Afghanistan is the world's capital of feeding the opioid epidemic with most of the world's poppy harvest. These corrupt agencies and contractors operate there and all over the world. Paul Cooksey emailed David Stewart. Both these guys are of state OIG, and said, referring to an audit involving the INLA, as already mentioned, quote, "If this ever comes up in senior staff, I thought this would be interest to you. End quote. Both Paul and David are OIG senior staff, so they must have been talking about State Department senior staff. This shows that they don't want their audit on the INLA to come to light. It's a case of the overseers running from who they oversee. State OIG running from their findings about the State Department. It's a den of lions. They can't even trust their own people. Next, SIGAR, or SIGAR, stands for Special Inspector General for Afghanistan Reconstruction, which exists in Afghanistan and is not the Inspector General for the State Department. You can find information on SIGAR here on this website too. They are caught doing a publicity stunt with DynCorp, but in the process and to a careful eye, they are actually helping DynCorp run drugs for the State Department. Quote, during review of the requests for consent to subcontract that DynCorp submitted to the contracting officer, the auditor noted that certain representations were inadequately supported, including representations that the services provided by Alpha Omega Services were commercial and that Alpha Omega Services was selected through adequate price comparison, end quote. Alpha Omega Services is a subcontractor of the notorious DynCorp. DynCorp would never employ a subcontractor before knowing it would be willing to do dirty work. They talk about non-commercial costs. What else would that be other than something illegal? And B, must be drugs because they're in that shady industry. SIGAR and DynCorp here are, as mentioned above, just doing a public relations stunt, costing taxpayers a ton of money in order for them to get back $154. Even the tininess of that amount shows how they're willing to spend a lot of money in order for a very small amount of money back. This has to be pulling wool over the eyes, because why else would it be funded? And why would the State Department keep funding them given DynCorp's bad history? Very bad history. They are complicit, these parties involved. Plus, I don't think they even got the $154 back. Ironic. It's amazing how 31 pages of text can be written with no real meaningful content except to look formal and prudent, which it isn't. That whole document is on this website. Going back to the OIG FOIA action document on page 18, AAR is another dirty contractor in competition with DynCorp and getting the $10 billion aviation contract for drug running and some ratification of drugs around the world. When the State Department gave the contract to AAR instead of DynCorp got pissed, really pissed. DynCorp, even though their position could be called a monopoly, sued both AAR and the U.S. government. DynCorp's basis for these lawsuits was that AAR got intelligence on who works in the global drug running industry. Of course, they don't actually say that. So they got intelligence on DynCorp personnel. So AAR was able to offer the U.S. government a cheaper contract with which to do the dirty work. Of course, these actual reasons were not specifically mentioned in court, but from a careful review of the information, it can be seen that's the sordid reality. AAR specifically got the personnel and salary inside information from a DynCorp subcontractor called EAST, which stands for Eagle Aviation and Technology. You can find the references to that DynCorp subcontractor as well as lawsuits on this website. in an article titled AAR Employee Solicited Rivals Trade Secrets. Technically, AAR and East did violate the law because they breached DynCorp's non-disclosure agreements. Non-disclosure agreements are a method of corporate enslavement because they treat employees as property that belong to the corporation. That prevents employees with the information they possess from disclosing it to any third parties, in this case AAR. And AAR must have already known of some of the contacts, even if dirty, because they're all in the same industry. So in that arena, AAR just took over the drug running instead of DynCorp. Dirty, but in a dirty industry, there's dirt. For the East employee to sell information to AAR and for state OIG, etc., to minimize their findings, it shows they're all still complicit with what that information does. They should know better, and they do. They know exactly what it leads to, and they are dirtier than hell. So to summarize, on this website, you can find conclusive evidence of A, drug running and money laundering by the State Department through its contractors, B, those contractors fighting with each other over who gets the money to do the dirty work, C, public relations stunts to legitimize illicit activity, and D, the hypothetical oversight of these activities panicking and doing damage control, especially related to the breaching of a key non-disclosure agreement which threatened DynCorp's position in the worldwide drug trade. I hope I've explained the introduction to this site in an understandable way. Feel free to ask me any questions. The email address is at the bottom of the page. And just read through the site, take your time, and come to your own conclusions.